This is video 7 on antibacterials, which is another word for antibiotics. Although there are many antibiotics on the market that doctors will prescribe for you when you get sick, IB is primarily concerned with penicillin. So that's why you see here the history of penicillin. So you don't need me to read this to you, but just the high points here. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin by accident, and it was discovered as it's a mold, and that's how he discovered it. And then it was Florey and Chain who began working with it and found that it was effective in both mice and then eventually in humans. Now, the problem is that it was hard to produce in large amounts because obviously mold forms on food and it kind of forms irregularly. And if we were going to use this mass produced, it was difficult to get a lot of food to mold like that. So it wasn't until the 1940s that they were actually able to mass produce penicillin. And the reason penicillin is so successful as an antibiotic is because it cannot interfere with the bacteria's cell walls. So this is requiring you sort of to remember a little bit of biology, but a bacteria is something that is considered a living organism. And we call it living because it has the ability to reproduce on its own. And it has a cell wall, and the penicillin will interfere with the production of the cell wall. And so, therefore, the bacteria then without the cell wall can't function, and therefore it will eventually die off, and that's how the penicillin works. Now, the first penicillin was called penicillin G. The problem with the penicillin G is that when you took it orally and ingested it into your stomach, the acid in your stomach would deactivate it. So this penicillin needed to be injected, and it's possible that maybe some of you have had a penicillin injection before into your rear end, and it hurts. Now, most of you, though, have probably taken penicillins orally. When you get strep throat, that's a very common antibiotic that is prescribed to treat strep throat. And the ones that you take when they're orally taken is acid resistant, so it doesn't get affected by your stomach acid. And the common structure of all penicillins is in your your booklet, table 20, and it's a 6-amino penicillinic acid. That's not easy to say, obviously. And then they can change the side chains on each of those amino groups to change to different types of penicillins. Some terminology for you: broad spectrum antibiotic versus narrow spectrum. It's pretty self-explanatory. A broad spectrum antibiotic is active against a wide range of bacteria, and a narrow spectrum is effective against only a very small family, a specific family of bacteria. Please note that I didn't say one type of bacteria, I said a family of bacteria. Now, which is better to be prescribed? Well, it is better to be prescribed a narrow spectrum antibiotic so that you're only killing the bacteria that you intend to kill, the harmful bacteria. When you take antibiotics, and some of you may have experienced this, you have to remember that an antibiotic is going to kill both the healthy bacteria possibly in your digestive tract as well as the one you're trying to get rid of, like strep throat. Well, when you do that, then sometimes you get, with the healthy bacteria and digestive tracts being killed off, you sometimes get symptoms like diarrhea or nausea. And they'll sometimes tell you to have yogurt or whatever to replace those probiotics, the ones we want in our bodies. So the other thing that's mentioned is antibiotic resistance, and we're going to talk about that here. If we overprescribe antibiotics, doctors, or we use them too often, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just a prescription. We also ingest antibiotics sometimes unknowingly, or maybe we know but we're not worried about it, when we eat chicken, poultry, meat, whatever, because those antibiotics are often fed to farm animals to make them grow faster and keep them healthy. And so when we ingest meat that has been treated with an antibiotic, we are eventually building up the antibiotic in our system. And the bacteria are smart, and they have the ability to develop resistances against those penicillins. And over time, the result is that the prescription antibiotics will be less effective. The other problem is when people don't take their prescription for the entire time that it's prescribed. So let's say you get strep throat, you go to the doctor, and they tell you you have to take penicillin 2 times a day for 10 days. And you do it for 2 days, and you already start to feel better. It's very important for you to finish that course of medication because Initially, when you take an antibiotic, the antibiotic is killing off the weakest bacteria first. And although you start to feel better, there are still plenty of bacteria in your body, and those bacteria will not get killed off until the last day of the dose. That's why they give you 10 days of that. If you stop early, those bacteria are not entirely killed off and have the ability then to evolve and become resistant to that penicillin. So overall, over time, you could become not immune, but it will not work as well when you take that antibiotic. So that's the end of the antibacterial video. Make sure you write down any questions you have as you watched. If something didn't make sense, we can obviously talk about it next time in class.